everybody, and welcome to another episode of Into the Void podcast, the show with the title that has three meanings. One being where we're screaming, our relevancy in American culture, and our trajectory in the iTunes rankings. Ryan still can't make it because he's playing hide and seek against himself, and, well, he's winning. We're back. Doing more shows. Getting consistent with this, you know? Gotta work at it. This is not as fun as I make it for everybody. Just kidding. By the way, though, a good way to support this show at the moment would be to go on iTunes, which is especially easy if you have an iPhone, or somehow figure out access to our podcast in any other way if you have an Android. I don't know what the Android people do anymore. I used to have an Android, but I lost it long ago for the iPhone once I got rid of my iPod Classic. And that was only 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I lost my iPod Classic and just settled for the iPhone. I'm not very tech savvy, as you can tell by the production value that this podcast has taken since Ryan disappeared. Anyways, though, if you go on to iTunes or find our podcast any way you do, go ahead and subscribe to it. One, that'll make it way easier for you to get new episodes because those pop right up on whatever feed that you get our podcast on. Two, it'll give you a good way to rate and review the show. Better be good things because we're just that good. And it boosts my numbers, and hopefully we can get something real interesting and worthwhile for everyone going on. By the way, I decided as well to make every new episode come out on Fridays, so be looking for that on Friday, and that'll be much easier to come across it when you are on iTunes and you are subscribed. I decided the best way to keep this going and keep up on it is to just pick a day. Pick a day they're all due. I'll definitely have time until that certain day to record. So it should make it a little easier. I think that's what, not only was the studio space super helpful for the rest of us to get shows going in terms of, oh man, it's going to be playing on the radio this day, so we got to make sure we get it done on the radio. But it kind of helps us give a metric of our progress because, and I mean, you know, aside from acts of God that has shown up on these podcasts in terms of what we've had to deal with and why we couldn't record, losing studio space, relocating, and so on and so forth, it gives us it kind of halts whatever progress we get, gives us a little rust recording. Believe it or not, this is not really super easy, you know? I gotta fill up time by talking. I don't even talk that much when I'm at home. Like, the biggest complaint of everyone I know is that I'm too quiet. And yet here I am, having to fill, around an hour or whatever of your lives and try to make it interesting for you because I want it to be interesting. And also, I'm trying to make my furniture out of money. I want to stuff my cushions with $100 bills and not have to work really unfulfilling jobs. And I'd like to be able to do that through the podcast and your help, everybody. So I would appreciate it if you would rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast and build some sponsorships. I can find you guys some cool stuff to buy. And it would also give me a little kickback from helping you find cool stuff to buy. It's not that I'm lazy that I don't want to work certain jobs, believe me. I have worked plenty of jobs that require a lot of backbreaking and long hours and a lot of time and effort and energy with little payoff. And I know that's what a lot of people are struggling with nowadays, but I've decided to take matters into my own hand and decide my own destiny, so we'll see where that goes. I think, you know, I do have a work ethic, but I just don't think that necessarily my calling is a lot of times the same as everyone else's in what everyone tells me. So we'll see, though. We'll see if my talents will match my desires, and that's always something that is up for discussion for sure. I know for a fact a lot of people probably hate my stuff, but who cares? I'm going to do it anyways. That's what makes it fun. So, last episode, I think I was talking about my retirement from politics, and that garnered a reaction from a couple people, actually. Weird. I'm actually starting to, I'm still surprised when I'm getting responses to this show. I kind of expect, obviously, on the top of the show when I describe what this show's about and, or what Into the Void really means besides being a badass Black Sabbath song, I talk about, where we're screaming into the void, where there's nothing coming back. It's our own little echo chamber, if you will. You can call, that could be considered a poisonous ideology or whatever in terms of getting used to a echo chamber, but that's kind of what it is, because you have to, become someone. You have to be a draw, as they say in the old wrestling world. All my wrestling friends will appreciate that. But you have to have a reason for someone to listen. And I'm hoping to do that. And unfortunately, digressions really distract you. And I got distracted by myself. That's how it happens a lot sometimes. A lot of times it's just internally in my head, though, not out loud. So now I actually hear it and I'm like, whoa, dude. Whoa, dude. Anyways, so Into the Void, basically just, when I mean screaming into it, I'm still not used to getting a lot of feedback. Maybe I should call it Into the Feedback once I maybe get more popular, but who knows. Anyways, so I got a email titled "The Real Reason Donald Trump Won the Election," and I'm like, okay, here we go. This is gonna be rich. Basically, says, "Hey Sean, heard your last show about retiring from politics. I think in general that's a good idea. I think a lot of people are way too defensive about their viewpoints and the identity politics involved. Very, very true. That's the problem, I think, too. It's that tribalism in terms of, this is my team. No, this is our team, and our team's going to kick your team's ass, and that's just not how it works. But anyways, okay, where was I? Okay, and I would like, however, to... I would like, however, to challenge you on the idea of Donald Trump not necessarily winning the election in a completely fair manner. Much like George Bush, a lot of people think the election was rigged, and Russia might have a lot to do with it, and the xenophobia of the country has turned against what is right. Okay, see, that's where it gets a little more complicated, in my opinion, because like I said last show, there's a lot of people that are prejudiced in some sort of way. And let me I am a big fan of dipping into really, bro? Lemmy. Oh, boy. Just as much of a wild card as the front of Motorhead himself. Anyways, I will definitely go down the lane of conspiracy road. I am a big fan of conspiracy theories, even if I don't believe them. I love talking about them. I love researching them. Some of them or even probably pretty close to being true, or at the very least has raises some questions. My girlfriend as well, she loves them. She almost is more conservative and or question askery than me. A lot of times I just kind of go with what the simplest answer is, and sometimes there's not a simpler answer, or the answer is too simple in terms of questions need to be asked. That being said, there is a certain level of what's the word for it? Credibility to the idea of, I guess, Russian collusion or Russia swaying the election some way, or just foreign people swaying elections in any way, or having some sort of sway in policy making, lawmaking, etc. But when we think about it, a lot of times conspiracy theories falter when you ask, what's the end game? I mean, in general, you have the same, end game, and it makes some sense, like 9/11 being an inside job leading to Iraq, going to Iraq for oil. Although that never really made sense, because it doesn't make sense to go to war with Iraq when they, heard Afghanistan was where they wanted to go, because that's where they thought Osama bin Laden was, or whatever. If Russia really wanted to take down the country, they would have colluded with Hillary, because she was more likely to take down the country than Donald Trump in that regard. Donald Trump, and I mean that by Donald Trump is a friend of Putin's. He's not necessarily an ally, but he's kind of buddy with him, where you wouldn't really want to destroy him, and that's the bottom line of conspiracies, is that you want to destroy whatever you're conspiring against. 2, I don't think that's why he necessarily won. You can pull apart that whole conspiracy theory spiel that I just said, but it's mostly leading to the point where I think the answer is just plain simple. The dude won on a wrestling promo. When you really think about it, he Austin 316'd his way to the Oval Office. And for my wrestling fans or non-fans, if you don't know what that is, go onto YouTube, just type in Austin 316. It'll take you there. He saw a level of anger and desperation and despair from a demographic of people that were disenfranchised for a long, long time. Not just during the Obama administration, but even decades beforehand. Like I said last podcast, people can't eat. A large number of people don't even have $200 in their checking account. They don't have $400 in their savings account, let alone $1,000 in their savings account. People don't care about anything else but how they're going to get money and survive. That's the problem. Our country right now is in a survival mode. All we care about is finding food and shelter, and that's why we can't do anything else. And we're working ourselves to the bone just to make ends meet. So Donald Trump played on that anger. He even had a hat. He wore hats to speeches. How many times have you seen people wear a hat with their slogan on it during speeches? I haven't seen it, but I don't think a lot of people who are my parents' age have ever seen it, or my grandparents' age. He merched his campaign. He's got merch. He still does. He made money, or at least he was able to sell his campaign with Make America Great Again hats. He Austin 316 his way to the Oval Office. He cut great promos in terms of, in wrestling world, if you cut a promo, it means you're on the stage, you're in the ring, you're selling your storyline, you're selling the match that you're about to fight, either at the end of the day or the end of the show or whatever, or at a pay-per-view. He cut a great promo. He was like, I'm going to give you jobs. I'm going to keep everyone out that's a threat to your jobs. And I'm going to make us all have money again. And that's the bottom line, because Donald Trump said so. That's my Donald Trump impression. Not good. Not good. So I think I'll end it with that. I think this is it. That's done. I'm done talking about it now, as officially now. So any other responses, it's fine. I'm not necessarily going to shut out all conversation, but I would like to direct this podcast to more fun and entertaining and positive things, I guess. There's too many people talking about it anyways. What else am I really going to add to the conversation, to be honest? There's not a whole lot to really, add. So I'm just not going to talk about it anymore. Maybe in private with other people, but that's about it. And I'll tell you what, it's hard to find material to talk about, that's for sure, because at least with, politics or whatever, you got a wealth of material to talk about because you got some every day. I would like to make these episodes a little less disposable than talking about current events, though. I think that's one of the main problems of at least super topical stuff. And, especially late shows. You don't remember many late show episodes or anything like that, or talk radio episodes. You might remember, a clip or two or whatever, especially if it's saved or replayed or whatever. But pretty much the next time you hear the show, you've already forgot the last show because they're just so topical. They're so disposable. They're gone right away. So I like these to have a little bit more shelf life because they are podcasts. And you can go back to them, at least in the feed. I mean, at the moment right now, I'm having to try to pay for the server space to hold a lot of archived episodes because the free services that they offer are only so free until you need a lot of space and the ability to store them. And that's why this is. I'm doing a ballsy investment though in investing in this podcast because I'm losing money right now. I mean, I'm eating the cost because I want to do it and I love to do it and I hope you guys love it too. But that's the case. And anyways, I think that'll be it for the political side of stuff. I'd like to give this show just a little more shelf life and a little more ability to last, because I know for a lot of reasons I go back to old episodes of podcasts I listen to and like to hear old episodes. And it's okay to stay somewhat topical because you get a small time capsule of where things were at the time of that episode. And people like Joe Rogan, who just, man, he's a machine. I wish I could release as many podcasts as him, but with how many he does, it does become a little more disposable because, of course, he makes a lot of them, and there's just sometimes too much there. Many a phrase is around. Rock and roll is dead. I love that one. Heard that today, actually, on the radio. I know many people think even the radio's dead, but there's still a need for radio. But like I said in my last rock and roll show, I don't think rock and roll is necessarily dead. It might be on life support, but I think that it's it's still on the old record industry model and slowly moving out. I don't want it to completely move out. I guess I'm like a lot of the rock and roll fans that a lot of people complain about, especially the ones who are artists themselves. Are like, well, no one's all the rock fans just buy physical, and those record sales don't really count much anymore in terms of the numbers because now everyone looks at the streams and the iTunes downloads and stuff. But I personally enjoy more tactile stuff. I've lost so much music because I've had it digitally and not physically, and like my computer crashed or something, that I'm like, screw it, I'm just going to go back to buying CDs and just ripping it onto my computer, because at least I do have it digitally or whatever, but at least I got it physically if I lose my computer. because I've had to rebuild like my entire music collection. I've had songs I haven't been able to listen to just because I don't have it anymore, and I don't want to do that anymore. So I think that's one of the main reasons why, and that's one plus side of metal fans. They're the ones who are the most hardcore, and that hardcoreness can go good or bad in either way. I think I love metal music. I really do. It's my favorite stuff, and I think that hardcore fanness goes good in terms of finding community and creating that subculture that metal music became. And it goes bad in terms of the metal elitists, if you will. That's a big complaint around the internet too, is the metal elitists, because there's people that are basically like, fuck you, you like this band, you're not, blah, 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 blah. It's kind of how the old punk scene, I guess, has had evolved, where you're never metal enough, you're never punk enough. And if you're not, you're just a poser, even though it's like, pretty soon you go so far into the vortex of metal and punk fandom that you've kind of just swirled back around back into poserdom. So, you like who you like music-wise. I mean, honestly, I'm still of the old school, like, bluesy rock type of fandom, where I still consider Zeppelin metal, but I mean, you're going to get out of a metal fan, you're going to get big fans of Zeppelin and people who will agree with the argument that they were super influential in music history, and of course in metal music history as well, because a lot of metal musicians cite, besides Sabbath, they cite Zeppelin as one of their biggest influences, at least in the early days. But it's gone so far out of control. I mean, it's that political tribalism that sort of bled over into music, and it's like, guys, this is music, this is something that we are supposed to, like, be enjoying here. Like, this is supposed to be an escape from our, crappy lives and having to talk about serious stuff all the time in politics. And now we're bringing that kind of ideology and that negativity back into something that's supposed to be an escape. And I think that's the most frustrating thing for a lot of people, too. It's like, can I just like what I like? Man, like, seriously. Like, and you could argue that it's happening in a lot more entertainment industries, or parts of the entertainment industry as well. And I also include professional sports in that. Hey, everybody, I apologize for that weird, jarring edit point. Unfortunately, like we had at KPVR back in the day, we had an interruption. And we had to pause the show, and my tiny little puppy dog went crazy. This is the kind of professionalism you'll get from my control of the show. This. I'm about to do a Bill O'Reilly We'll Do It Live moment, everybody. I'm just kidding, but it kind of threw off my flow, that's for sure. And that's why I'm trying to build an empire and have a more secret location where I'm doing this show, so then no one can bother. But it is what it is, and this is the struggles you do to get there. So we'll see how it goes from here. But anyways, as I was saying, metal fans are some of the best fans out there, and they can also be some of the worst. They'll eat their own just to spite their face. I believe I'm part of that, somewhat part of that community. I think, honestly, I never really have been a part of like an extreme subculture to the point where I felt like I fit in. I mean, I love skateboarding. I've been skateboarding for a long time. I should probably be way better at skateboarding than I am now. I've had some, thank you, some involuntary hiatuses from skateboarding, aka like just a few months, basically. Nothing too long, but not always by my choice. And I love metal music, but I feel like everyone a lot of times is like, this guy doesn't really like it, blah, 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 he's a poser or whatever. But you know what? I don't really care because I just like what I like, and that's how it should be. And instead, though, you got the metal musicians policing each other and telling each other what they should and shouldn't like. And I've seen that a lot on like the music forums, or like metal music forums, and like YouTube comments. And of course we all know what kind of cesspool that YouTube comments are, but they're still entertaining nonetheless. Like, I'll go out and say it right now. I like Avenged Sevenfold. I'm just gonna let that sink in for a few seconds. Yeah, I do. I'm okay with it. I'm unembarrassed. I'm unashamed. I know a lot of people like to shit on them, that's for sure. And don't get me wrong, I'm not like some huge fanboy or whatever, but I enjoy their stuff. I like their songs. They got some good stuff. And it is true though. There's a video on online about SpongeBob scenes being metal musicians, and one of them where SpongeBob was trying to get into the salty spittoon, and he's like, time to kick it up a notch, and cracks his knuckles, and then breaks his hands, he starts crying, and that was Avenged Sevenfold. And I'm like, alright, I can get it. I mean, they kind of a lot of times come off as big fanboys of bands that they worshipped when they were young, or, still worship or whatever. But isn't that how it kind of should be? I mean, that's kind of why metal music has been so influential over the years, is because we all kind of dork out on it anyways. Like, like I'm wearing a Black Sabbath shirt right now. Like, I'm willing to buy stuff that has their print on it. Like, that's how much of a dork I am about them. And like, so I don't think that's necessarily wrong. And listen, like, again, if this, if a certain band or musician isn't your cup of tea, it's not your cup of tea. Like, pop music or whatever ain't my cup of tea. Country ain't my cup of tea. Like, jazz or whatever ain't my cup of tea necessarily. I understand and in respect of jazz though, because I understand its history and the roots of rock and roll that it created, as well as blues and country blues as well. So I will go as far back to say that kind of stuff, but nowadays, it's not my cup of tea. So I'm not trying to convince you to like Avenged Sevenfold or anything like that. Do I think people take it a little too far in calling them crap? Yeah. Some of their stuff is poppy or whatever, and some of their stuff isn't super, heavy or whatever, but, I apologize for liking melody. I'm sorry that a chorus or a hook gets me. Oops. I'm sorry. One of the biggest things about metal that I don't like is when I hear a nice killer guitar riff and then I hear pig squeals and grunts and growls. While in certain aspects is fine, I like Amon Amarth. I like some metalcore bands, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But I prefer clean vocals. I'm sorry. I like a good aggressive guitar riff. I like some good solo action. But I grew up on clean vocals. I mean, Black Sabbath, Zeppelin, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Metallica, Lynyrd Skynyrd. They're not metal, but I'm just saying, like, in terms of classic rock or whatever, that's what I grew up on. Motorhead is another one of my favorites. They're like a biker punk metal, whatever subgenre. There's way too many subgenres. Holy cow. Like, no joke. There's like, what, almost as many subgenres of music as there are, gender pronouns now. Like, it's gotten ridiculous. There's like, I saw there's one like Nintendo core where it's just like, Mamma Mia. Like, what is that? What it is? I've never heard it, but I'm assuming that's what it is. It's just the Mario theme song with a guy screaming Mamma Mia, growling Mamma Mia, not really screaming. The bottom line is, though, I like vocals where you can actually understand what someone is saying, because I love lead singers. I wish I could become a lead singer of a band. That's probably why I do a podcast, because I would like to hear my voice in a micro. I actually really don't like hearing my voice in a microphone. I've heard it. Oh man, I remember hearing it for the first time on the very first podcast I ever did, and I was like, good God, is that really what I sound like? I want people to be honest. What do I actually sound like on... Is what I'm hearing on the stereo what everyone else is hearing? Because I feel like my voice is way different than what it sounds like on a recording. Although, I've gotten used to it. I've learned to accept it. I've learned to not overanalyze it. And I've learned to embrace it. I don't listen to my own show, but I think it's plenty reasonable, and there's plenty of good reasons not to do that. Anywho, Avenged Sevenfold. I like them. I don't like all their stuff. I didn't like. I pretty much started liking them basically from their solo album, or not the solo album, but the self-titled album, the white album with the little bat thing. I remember I actually used to make fun of Avenged Sevenfold a lot. I made that journey along with everyone else, where I was like, please, a skull with bat wings, okay, whatever, we get it. You like metal, or you guys are metalheads or whatever. Those are very like, creepy whatever imagery that you use to portray whatever, like bats and skulls. There it is. That's metal right there. And then I remember hearing Almost Easy or whatever for the first time, and I was like, okay, we get it. You like talking about insanity because that's metal and that's freaky and blah blah blah. You're not insane. I'm not insane. Like, way to say it over and over again. And I've been there. I've been there on that journey, and since then I would hear them maybe here and there and be like, okay, like, Nightmare was pretty fun song, but again, it was like, okay, we get it. Like, it's all about like mental insanity, asylum, blah, blah. I was like, all right, Disturbed already did that. Disturbed's already got the market cornered on the whole like insane mental illness metal or whatever you want to call it. And, Welcome to the Family, that was also a pretty good one, I will say. Like, it got me a little bit more. It was pretty catchy, and like M Shadows' voice started becoming a little less like nasally, where he would do those little like Axl Rosy nasally breakdowns or whatever vocally, as you hear like in Almost Easy as well. And Backcountry for sure. I've only heard that song a couple times, to be honest, but I don't really go any farther back, because that's when they started out doing they were doing that little metalcore thing where they were screaming all the time, and it was just like, no thanks. And then, Hail to the King comes along. You're like, all right, This Means War is pretty cool. It's very much like Sad But True. A lot of people say it is Sad But True, just with different lyrics, and I was like, okay, that's arguable. And then, there's Hail to the King. That's a fun one because it's all like cool and it's like, power metal and, like a wrestling theme song, basically. That's how I'll describe it, because it, it's just like masculinity bottled into 3-4 whatever minutes of a song, where it's just like, this is metal. And this is like, power. This is blah, 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 blah. And, watch your tongue or have it cut from your head. Like, like Games of Thrones, D&D, like, the way people who aren't, the jockey types are able to, like, get into their masculinity. Which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with masculinity. I think that's a big problem now, is the men's jeans are getting tighter and the women's jeans are getting looser. I don't mean that by a fashion choice. I don't mind. Although, my huevos are becoming scrambled because of how tight jeans have become. I'm just looking for a normal pair of jeans, and I'm having to, like, cut the inseam out just to give my boys some breathers. But anyways, I don't think there's anything wrong with masculinity. I think that a lot of femininity also exists to balance out the masculinity. That's why both masculinity and femininity exists. And there's nothing wrong with being a semi-feminine male or whatever and having feminine characteristics. There's nothing wrong with females having more masculine characteristics. But to call masculinity toxic is just laughable. I guess I can talk about cultural politics like that. I'm not getting into the nitty gritty of the president, I guess, maybe. I don't know. I think calling it toxic masculinity or whatever is just such malarkey, hokum, bullshit, whatever you want to call it. That it's a word they like to use in order to tear men down just so they can have power, and it's not about equality. If you were really about equality, you would accept masculinity and femininity alone and convince people to cooperate and not separate and divide and tear one down to build the other up. But that's just how human nature works, everybody. You all know that. I don't know why I need to tell you that. Anyways, that's what I would describe Hail the King as. Coming back. But that's how I would describe Hail the King being in terms of like a wrestling song, It's supposed to be kind of a roid ragey, okay, not roid ragey, but, bodybuilding, testosterone flowing, blah, I'm gonna kick your ass, blah, 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 like wrestling song. Or that type of album, basically. And then recently, I heard The Stage. And that made me, in retrospect, look back at everything and listen to it in a new perspective and change my mind completely. Now, many metal fans will call me a sellout. A lot of the Avenged Sevenfold fans will call me a poser. I'm going to get it from both sides. I know that for sure. And I know in some circles getting it from both sides is fantastic. At the very least, I'm prepared. I am a fan of The Stage. I think that album is a straight up masterpiece. I think it's at least the best metal album I've probably heard in the last 5 years. Now, something you should know about me is I'm stuck in the dark ages, and I still mainly listen to Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, but I still like to listen to a lot of newer metal. And The Stage was amazing. It was an amazing album. From the song The Stage to the song Exist, all the way through, there was one you couldn't skip. And that's how you know we got a perfect album, is if every song is you have to listen to. And it's even better when you hear it all and not just, by the song like nowadays where they just sell single and then a bunch of filler noise to promote the single. This album was cohesive in every way. You just have to listen to the album. And I'm an album listener. I prefer to hear the whole album, not just the song. Usually. Especially if I start on my record player or my iPod and I start a song by the band just because I want to hear it, I end up having to listen to the whole album, even if the album's bad, just because I'm an album listener. I like to hear the whole thing because a lot of times it tells the whole story. It's kind of like watching Star Wars Episode 4 and then just not watching the rest of the movie. I can't really do that. I got to finish the whole story once I start it. But anyways, I heard on interview, I think it was a Jericho podcast, where they were explaining the album, why they made it, what they were doing, what they were trying to do, their intentions, why they even released it secretly, what they wanted to do creatively, musically, and personnel-wise, and so on and so forth. I definitely think that the stage is their most sonically mature iteration that they've ever done yet. I remember hearing about the Hail to the King album, and they're basically just like, well, this is an album that's kind of an homage to all their influences, and you can really hear that influence, but it's like at least they made like an album that was like still kind of their own. They were still, even though they were heavily influenced by their bands that they were a fan of, they still made their own songs. Like, at least they wrote their own lyrics and made their own songs. And there are a couple gems on there, even that aren't the singles that I would recommend people listen to. But to say these guys aren't metal is kind of sad to me, because I think that there are only a few bands that can really like pop out of the metal zeitgeist. There I am using zeitgeist again. Look at me, I'm a pseudo-intellectual just like everyone else in my college. But anyways, I remember I remember seeing the disdain for Avenged Sevenfold when there's a cover, I think, of a magazine. I think it was like Kerrang or something, another like a popular metal magazine, where Ozzy said that, you know, they're the next generation of like the metal torch carriers, blah 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 blah. And it's like, and people got worked up about it. It's like, guys, chill out, please. Like, people were like so worked up about like it's a travesty. I'm like, guys, you guys are talking to Ozzy here. Like, like if anyone has like the final say on anything metal, don't you think it should one of the guys from Black Sabbath? Like, come on. But like, it's not even that, and not necessarily that I necessarily agree with that either. It's just like, first of all, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. However, I think that it's ridiculous to get so worked up about that and really think about who else would it be that represents metal, at least. I mean, in Oregon, you hear Tool on the radio all the time because everyone loves Tool, but they haven't released an album in about, I don't know, since 1976. And even I don't like a lot of the Tool fans, and I waited like a good decade and a half just to become a fan of them, because I was like, all right, I'm going to wait till, it was like how I started watching Breaking Bad. I kind of waited till after the show, or towards the end of the show, like a couple seasons towards the end, where all the hype kind of died down a little bit, and then you can kind of go in it with your own expectations and your own lens, because it was getting pretty bad. Especially in Oregon. They love Tool up there. And I kind of got swept up in it too, I guess, being up there. But I love Tool. And I couldn't stand the fans for a long time. It wasn't until my buddy Porter kind of gave me a longer listen and a bigger education in Tool. Which, Porter, haven't talked to you in a while, buddy. Good to hear from you. Good to mention from you. Hear from you as in me talking about you. Porter's a good guy. Good guy. Last time I saw him was really embarrassing for me, I'll say that much. All I'll say about that is don't not eat for 36 hours and then drink hard apple cider. Just bad idea. And I learned that lesson the hard way at his graduation party. Yikes. Like I said before, I've made plenty of mistakes in my life. Really regrettable ones. That was up there. But anyways, the Tool fans. Didn't always like them. I came around the band, though, after I waited a while. But anyway else, though, there's nobody that you can really feasibly say that's garnered any real popularity metal-wise. And if there is someone, let me know. I'm really out of the loop. I barely have internet. If so, it's basically just to upload podcasts on here. I'm not kept up on anything. I don't know nothing really about technology. The only thing technology-wise I know is how to take a picture with a camera. And that's about it. And edit videos. And that's about it. So if you have anyone that you recommend, go ahead and shoot me an email at sedooley8@gmail.com, which is this show's email for now, until we get the into the voidcast@gmail.com set up again. But sedooley8@gmail.com. That's the way to get a hold of us. For now. Like I said before. But go ahead. Write down your dissent. Let me know that I'm so wrong in that regard. Plus, it's a fluff piece, man. I'm sure Ozzy and everyone from Avenged Sevenfold are fans anyway, so Ozzy doesn't give a damn. You really think he cares about who's passing the metal torch? He barely calls it metal music now anyways. He barely called his music metal, and he created an entire subculture for decades, lifelong committed fans. And he doesn't care. He probably was asked that by the guy at the magazine's like, oh yeah, sure, whatever, man. That's probably them, whatever. He probably didn't care to answer. And we're all getting worked up about Ozzy saying that Avenged Sevenfold is passing the metal torch now that Black Sabbath's done and Avenged Sevenfold's taking off. And it's like, guys, who really cares anyways? I mean, not every band gets to be Gojira or, Behemoth or Mastodon or whatever. Like, it's okay. Like, there's a lane people are in and there's a lane people are not in. And there's nothing wrong if a song is catchy or poppy or whatever and it's still metal. If it's metal, I mean, Avenged Sevenfold, they got me. They got catchy shit. And like the Stage, they have less catchy shit, but it's still pretty catchy with a couple songs. The songs that they released as singles are catchy, but, it's still good music otherwise. It's just whatever mood you're in. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, the Stage, it could have flopped big time. And technically in record sales it did. But that's because they didn't promote it. They didn't really have a lot of press on it. They talked about it after they even released it secretly. But it could have flopped in terms of their ambitions. They had an idea in mind and they could have failed to meet them, but they didn't. And here, the one thing that won me over the most about that band, though, was the fact that they don't see themselves as the end-all, be-all, or whatever of the new generation of metal, blah, blah, blah. They get these accolades, but they still are like, we have work to do, we have work to do. These guys are creative, they're ambitious, and they got a work ethic, man. They go to work. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what you should be looking for in a band. You want a band that wants to go to work. That's what they did, and that's how they came up with the Stage, which is a freaking masterpiece. And I don't say that a lot. Like, I'll say an album is good or it's bad or not. Or, it's really good, blah, blah, blah. I'm usually not too enthusiastic because it's like, the new music's great. Like, a lot of new music that of bands that I like is great. But it's like, it's just another story in the chapter, and we'll move on from here, and I'll enjoy the songs as they come. A lot of albums are growers. Anyways, you had to kind of listen to them for a while to get them on, but boom, right away did the Stage just kind of smack you in the face and tell you, holy cow, we're like, this is it. Like, they kind of just had to, like, lay the line down. I mean, even the guitarist said, like, this is what I mean. I don't know that much about Avenged Sevenfold. I'm kind of just drifting into fandom of them. The guitarist, I think it's Sinister Gates, he said himself, he's like, people were saying that I can't solo, so we just made an album where I soloed pretty much the whole time, show them, hey, screw you, I know how to. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that, and that's the attitude I'd like to see, and it shows in their work. They've shown and listening to their older albums, they have had a visible and natural progression as a band. And they really put in the work. I can't tell you how, like, I can't tell you enough times that the work really means a lot. Work means a lot. In Oregon, we're workers. We're born and bred workers. And that shows in everything we do. That's why there's a culture difference in Oregon and California skateboarding. And it shows with six-pack skateboards. I've known Shay, for the owner of Six Pack Skateboards. I've known him for 15 years now, since I was 10 years old. 15 years. At least now. I mean, this is a crazy long time that I've been friends with him. Good times, bad times. You know, we had our share. Bottom line is, though, we work. And that's what it shows in his products at Six Pack Skateboards. T-shirts, hoodies, koozies, boards. I'm sure he'll come out with new stuff and new ideas. He's a frothing pot of creativity in terms of skateboarding and skateboarding-like stuff. All for a really great price. I know a lot of people will buy his stuff just because it's cheaper than going to Zoomies or, you know, San Diego or PacSun or any even local skate shops where they're trying to sell you some overpriced, high markup boards and stuff. He puts a lot of thought into what makes a good board because he's been a skateboarder his whole life. He lives his brand. He is his brand. Just like Avenged Sevenfold is their music and who they are. I'm almost getting as good as Paul Harvey with my commercial reads. LOL. Not really. Bottom line is, you want to buy anything from him, you either go to his Instagram page. He still has yet to set up a website, which is something that he should probably do. But anyways, you go to his Instagram, go to 6pack_skateboards. All spelled out. SIXPACK_skateboards. Spelled out. I don't want to really have to spell it out right now. And you can find him on Facebook as 6pack Skateboards S. Spell it out, but spell skateboards at the end with 2 S's. I think that's his way of telling us he's a neo-Nazi. Just kidding. You're the man, Shay. Bottom line is, though, if you put a 6-pack in your stomach, chase it with 1 under your feet. There it is again, Shay. Get a slogan. I'll be waiting for my commission check to be on your payroll. In the meantime, I will now continue this show. You know, sometimes it's hard to just sit there and try to carry a show for a long time. Especially when you're trying to do this last second while constantly fighting interruptions and stealing your focus. But Avenged Sevenfold, they put in the work. I like melody. I like good guitar riffs. And they have both of those. Another band I know that gets a lot of flack is Killswitch Engage. And I know they're still pretty popular in general, but they get a lot of flack from metalcore fans for not doing enough screaming and Howard Jones's clean vocals. And then from the metal community, he has clean vocals, so he's evil. And it's like, again, clean vocals are not evil. They're fine. And they're still metal. I mean, all the pioneers of metal all had clean vocals. And you could still sound just as scary in metal with clean vocals. It's been done time and time again. And it will hopefully continue. They have great guitar riffs. And I'm sorry, a lot of Killswitch fans, but Howard Jones is hands down the best vocalist that Killswitch could have, and it's really a bummer that he left. Jesse, you're fine, but you're just not as good as Howard, in my opinion. He's the Bruce Dickinson of Killswitch Engage. He brought that band to an entirely new level, an entirely new popularity. As Daylight Dies is probably, again, one of the best metal albums of that decade. It's an amazing song. It's another one where you can't skip a track because it's all good. Another masterpiece, if you will. But you still get crap from metal fans because you like metalcore. Whatever that means. I hear metal in the genre and I go for it. And then you get crap from metalcore fans because it's not metalcore. And it's like, aren't we getting all bogged down in the details here? Let's go ahead and get over it, guys. Because there's a sleeping giant that is pop music that's taking over. Radio and public broadcasting like that isn't really going to go anywhere. So it's not that radio's dying, that rock and roll is dying. It's fine. But the problem is that pop music has taken over. It's the genres. It's not the actual platform, if you will, because vinyl's making a huge comeback. There's a lot of media types that can work in tandem with each other. It has nothing to do with, who's on what platform, who's up with the biggest technology, because a lot of times media works in congruence. Is that the right word? In community with each other? Either way. I mean, now you have a CD player, a tape player, and a record player. I used to have one before I had to sell it for, meth money or whatever, because I was so poor. But you have all these media types that you can play with each other, which has created a resurgence in popularity of tapes. I still have a bunch of tapes, and before I found tapes that I wanted to buy again, I hadn't had tapes in like 10, 15 years. I think the last time I had a tape was in like the year, 2002 maybe? I don't know. My family was way behind on technology, and I'm pretty much, I got my first like CD player in like 2010 when everyone else was having like the newest iPhone or whatever. So like there was some technology lag time between my family, and a lot of times I don't remember the 90s or whatever, like all the 90s kids like to say, only the 90s kids remember this or whatever. And it's like, I grew up in the 90s, I just didn't have cable. That's why I don't remember it. It doesn't make me less of a 90s kid or whatever the hell that means anymore. And I'm still stuck in the 80s technology in the 90s. I don't know. And that's kind of how it was in terms of me catching up in the 2000s. But these media types are making a resurgence. Vinyl is massively popular now, and I think it'll probably still keep going, honestly. I don't know if it's going to go away anytime soon again. Cassette tapes are on the rise now. People are now saying that cassettes have the best like audio sound or whatever. I think that's just another way of saying buy organic groceries. It's just a marketing ploy. But I do like tapes, and I still have to sometimes drive and buy cars that still play tapes because I'm poor and I can't afford a brand new Lexus like everyone else can. Yet, at least, if you rate, review, and subscribe to the show so I can get some sponsors and I can stuff my mattress with $100 bills. and then spend them sometimes, and then not spend them other times, like anyone with money. So, but it's not so much that old media is dying and that rock can't keep up. And while that may be true in some cases where the rock and roll industry is being stubborn and not moving forward, but it's like, that's what every dad does, right? And rock and roll is pretty much the dad's music now. And that's why it's important to raise your kids on that music. Because they'll be the young, youthful ones. But that's just the way the pendulum swings. I mean, we've gone through a time where disco was something big. I mean, it didn't last very long, but disco was something big too. And rock and roll then had to kind of stay in the underground again. And that's kind of how rock and roll's always worked. It's always been kind of somewhat in the underground, seeping through the cracks sometimes, and then back kind of towards the underground. It's kind of like a volcano underneath. It only erupts sometimes. Maybe bloop, bubbles up some lava. Otherwise, it's not going to be like a Mount St. Helens where it's just going to blow up and destroy an entire continent. Not like Mount St. Helens, but it's not like Pompeii where it's going to kill everyone in it. Mount Vesuvius or whatever it's called. Krakatoa, something. I'm so dumb. I used to know this stuff. And now I just forgot all of it. Who knows? It might be the pressure of being behind the mic. I should be used to it by now, but what can I say? But rock and roll's doing just fine. It's kind of disheartening, though, when you don't hear your music playing on the radio all the time. At least on certain stations. But you have to kind of deal with that. That's kind of just how it is right now, because pop music's ruling all now, and that's thanks to what is his deal, man? Ryan Seacrest. Like, he can't be real. He's not a real person. I don't think he's a real person. If he is, he's like, I don't know. It's like Kim Kardashian wearing like a Ryan Seacrest suit or something. Because his smile just looks so sinister. And his teeth are too white and straight. His teeth are so white and straight, he's got college campuses protesting him. I'm serious though. Like, this guy, he looks like the conniest con man in the history of this planet. He's like a real estate salesman that's trying to sell you like a house that 20 people were murdered in. Who is this guy anyway? Does anyone vet this guy? Like, he's out getting pedicures and manicures and starting this weird primped and proper man thing with like the gelled up frosted tips or whatever and his super white teeth. Am I just that much of a scumbag that's weird to me, or what? What's his deal? What's going on with you, Ryan Seacrest? Ryan Seacrest. He's the one that kind of took over everything, like the radio and everything. For some reason became so popular, trying to talk to us, smile. It's like, how do you not kill yourself having to talk like that all the time and looking like that? I know I would. By the way, anybody, if you're like, oh, this guy is sad, he's depressed, he wants to kill himself, someone help him. It's a joke, guys. Isn't that what I'm supposed to somewhat do here, is joke a little bit? I mean, this is a comedy podcast, but I can tell you what, the comedy stops right when I press record, because I'm the least funny person in the world. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of people who will agree with that. I'll say I'm the least funny person in the world behind a microphone, that's for sure. No matter how many times I want to do stand up or do this podcast well, I have it built up in my head how good it is. And that never actually happens when it's actually happening. Maybe it's nerves. Maybe I'll get so used to it it'll finally be good. Maybe it's not though. Maybe I'm just not good at it or I'll have to develop. I don't know. Metal elitists though. You don't have to be. Not every band has to be Tool or Gojira or Dream Theater. All great bands. I like their stuff. But just because someone likes to listen to other metal band doesn't mean that they're a worse fan than you. I wouldn't even call it pop metal either, but I mean pop in the sense of popularity and what the word actual pop means. Pop metal ain't bad. It's just different. If it's not your cup of tea, it's not your cup of tea, but for other people it is their cup of tea, and sometimes that's their gateway into metal music in general anyways. I never would have discovered, Tool. I mean, obviously that's a little different because they got a nice little cult up there in Oregon about Tool, but I never would have discovered bands like that. The, I guess, more proggy metal guys, if it wasn't for certain pop metal bands that I noticed or I knew about, like Metallica, pre and post Black Album, and Iron Maiden, and Led Zeppelin, and Black Sabbath, and Deep Purple, and Judas Priest, and Motorhead, and all those guys now that are characterized as dad rock. And Iron Maiden, especially, they're the ones that are the biggest, ones that are called dad rock. And it's like, really, guys? They're still metal. Like, I challenge you to say that to Bruce Dickinson. He would whip your ass. He would whip it. And I am putting so much emphasis on the H because that's how much ass he would whoop. He would whoop some ass. If you didn't say that first of all, if his music was dad rock. Maybe he wouldn't if you say it wasn't metal, but if you called it dad rock or bad, they would whoop your ass. And that right there is metal, right? Violence. No, I'm not condoning violence. But that's just sometimes how it works. No one's less of a metal fan or a bad metal fan just because they like someone different from you, or a quote dumb metal band, if you will, or not real metal. And you're not a better metal fan because you have some sort of, there's this weird pseudo-intellectualism that's connected to liking a certain band. One of the biggest things about the Tool fans that made me so blood-boiling angry was they would call their songs pieces. Yes, you guessed it right. They called a song a piece. And I'm like, I didn't know we were in the Museum of Modern Art. Or am I listening to a CD? Because I hear a song. I don't hear any pieces, though. They call them pieces. And that made me like, I hate the band so much right now. And I had to go away for a long time until finally someone who is a reasonable human being like Porter said, nah, man, they're actually really good. Please listen to them. And I did, and I liked it. People have their own musical journey. It's up to you to decide whether or not you want to help them in it or steer them away. There's no such thing as posers or blah, 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 blah. a lot of times if I see people who, have like the tattoos all over their body, everything's pierced, and they're wearing all the metal shirt or all the black shirts with the pentagrams on them and so on and so forth, it's like, oh, please, you're trying so hard. Is there anything wrong with jeans and a t-shirt? No. Because the song sounds the same. The acoustics don't change with your wardrobe. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. Maybe I'll try it. The acoustics don't change with the clothes. So why are you wearing all that crazy stuff for? It's fun to have an image. I have some clothes that are cool or whatever, at least on other people. Not on me, but clothes that I think that are kind of flashy, I should say. And I like wearing them because of how I look. Whoops, my headphones fell. Anyways, I have clothes that I think like have a certain look or whatever, and that's fine if that's what the look you want to project or whatever. But that doesn't mean you're more of a fan or not. To me, that just screams you're trying way too hard. But I guess what do I know? Alright, everybody, this episode I don't think is going to be as long as the last one. I'm probably just going to wrap this up real quick. I guess this one's a throwaway, because I really got nowhere with that one. You'll just hear my rambling again. But yeah, I mean, if you made it this far, everybody, thank you very much for listening. Again, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast so you can, one, get the new episodes earlier, and I can enjoy all the goodies of your good reviews and good ratings, and be a part of the conversation. I got people who are emailing at sedooley8@gmail.com, and I got people who would like to dialogue with me, I guess, or whatever, and it would be nice to hear from a lot more of you out there in the cyber ether, I guess, and see if there's something that you want to yell at me about, or say that I was saying was offensive or mean or rude or blah 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 blah. But you're only a star if you act like a star. Or as Ric Flair likes to say, if you want to be the man, you gotta beat the man. Woo! That was my best Ric Flair woo. But what he means by that is, you gotta live it. You gotta sell to people that you're a draw. And I think I'm a draw. So why don't you go ahead and just keep listening to this podcast from here on out. Rate, subscribe, and review, and allow me the chance to keep this podcast going. And I want a suit made of $100 bills. Because I would like to be an a-hole. Alright, everybody. See you later.